Good morning, I'm Claire Murphy. Welcome to the Solo Bureau. It's Friday, and you know what that means. We are whipping around the country today and finding out what's been happening around the states and territories. From new laws that have divided the NT, a win for a small but very successful business in Adelaide, and a little whoops from an AI data centre builder in Tassie. But before we do that, let's check out what's been happening while you were sleeping. It's Friday, July 24. A day after revealing it was caught up in a cyber breach, Origin Energy has revealed that its customers' bank and credit card details have also been compromised. Origin initially said they didn't believe those details had been taken, saying that names, addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers and account information of its almost 5 million customers could have been viewed. But they now believe that the last 4 digits of credit cards or the last 3 digits of bank accounts are also potentially caught up in the breach. Origin Chief Executive Frank Calabria apologised to customers, saying the company was working to contact everyone who's been affected. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has addressed the party faithful at the ALP's national conference in Adelaide. He didn't mention Pauline Hanson's One Nation, but he hinted at the party that has been gaining popularity in the polls throughout, saying you can go a long way in politics for a long time by raging against a system that you are part of without a plan to fix it, but that doesn't build anything.
Even the very first Labor government was not a monoculture. There were Protestants and Catholics, English, Irish and Scots. One was an American pretending to be a Canadian, and no one was quite sure if the leader was born in New Zealand or Chile. Those men could never have contemplated a Labor government caucus room with a majority of women, or a roll call which goes Abdo, Albanese, Ali, Ambi Hapaha, Ananda Raja and Ayres.
The European Union has slapped Google with an €890 million fine, saying the tech giant broke digital antitrust regulations by setting up Google Play and its search engine to force consumers towards its own services and apps, not competitors. It's the latest major crackdown by the EU on big tech companies, Google recently losing its appeal of a US $4.5 billion antitrust fine that was imposed on them for throttling competition and reducing consumer choice through the dominance of the mobile Android operating system. Teresa Ribera, the Executive Vice President for a clean, just and competitive transition, said that the best products should succeed because they're better, not because they're owned by the company running the search engine. The EU has been keeping a leash on the world's big 7 tech leaders, Amazon, Apple, Google's parent company Alphabet, Meta, Microsoft and TikTok owner ByteDance, accusing them of being gatekeepers that control access for consumers. The rate of women self-reporting domestic violence has declined for the first time in nearly a decade in New South Wales. The trend has been observed nationally, with Victoria, Queensland and Western Australia having a downward trend in recent times. Now, the New South Wales Bureau of Crime Statistics and Research's study shows that the percentage of adults self-reporting incidents of a physical assault or face-to-face threat by an intimate partner or family member has dropped from 0.91% from the period of 2016 to 2019 to 0.65% in the years 2022 to 2025. The data relies on a survey of victims compiled by the Australian Bureau of Statistics, the Bureau's director Jackie Fitzgerald saying the survey's expansive view of violence showed an overall reduction amongst its 6,000 respondents. Meanwhile, Pauline Hanson, just as she did with her White Australia comments and statements about paid parental leave, has said that her comments about domestic violence have also been taken out of context. Hanson said in an interview with Brisbane's 4BC that domestic violence was wrong, but it was a two-way street and that women shouldn't put up with violence. That led to advocates calling her out for victim blaming. Now Hanson says people should listen to the entire interview, blaming the media for only focusing on those lines and that she was taken out of context. Seinfeld star Jason Alexander has issued a public apology after Courtney Stodden criticised a 2012 comedy sketch in which she appeared as a minor. Stodden described the sketch in a recent Instagram post, saying that at age 17, Jason Alexander repeatedly rubbed his phone across her breasts while saying there was no signal in her head, but plenty of signal in her chest. He also joked that when she turned 18, he'd like to take her behind the couch and have his way with her. Alexander has addressed the controversy in a statement to Page 6, saying, looking back at the comedy sketch in which Miss Stodden and I participated in 2012, I completely agree that it is inappropriate and I truly regret it. But more importantly, I am deeply sorry for any harm or distress it has caused Miss Stodden. I offer her my sincerest apologies. Stodden married Doug Hutchinson in 2011 when she was just 16 and he 51. She has since described Hutchinson as a predator and pedophile, claims that he denies. They separated in 2017, Stodden now working as an advocate around legal reforms concerning child marriage in the US. The Aussie team has started off strong at the Commonwealth Games. The opening ceremony is underway just as this episode of the Solo Bureau is published. But on the lawn bowls turf, Australian bowler Aaron Wilson, whose nickname is Disco, has taken out his first game as he hunts down his third consecutive Comm Games gold. Wilson won his opening match 8-4, 6-6 over Guernsey's Jason Greenslade in front of a crowd that included Prince Edward. Dawn Heyman and Kelsey Cottrell also had a good start to their games in the women's pairs, beating Zambia's Gertrude Siame and Foster Banda 6-4, 14-0. Trillionaire Elon Musk claims his AI is making another version of the Odyssey. With Christopher Nolan's version of the story with its all-star cast dominating cinemas, Elon Musk has shared an AI-generated scene inspired by the story, claiming before this year ends, Grok Imagine will make a full-length movie of the Odyssey that is historically accurate and true to the art of Homer. Nolan's adaptation of the Odyssey has taken more than $264 million US worldwide on its opening weekend, recording the third largest opening weekend in the US in 2026 and making it the biggest opening of Nolan's career. Those are today's top stories. On the way next, we whip around the country, find out what's been going down in your hood. Okay, it is time to get on board. Keep that neck braced because we are whipping around the country today, starting with a little mistake made by a company building a very big project down in Tassie. AI company Firmus, who are building an AI data centre in St Leonards in the north of Tasmania, accidentally let slip a plan to use farm irrigation water to cool its servers. The company had just finished a PR trip where they assured Tasmanians that there was nothing to fear from them using too many resources, as they used what is called a closed-loop cooling system that didn't require as much water and would only actually need it if the outside temperature hit above 26 degrees. But in the process of holding a Q&A session on its own website, Firmus responded to the question, why Wesleyvale, when it was written, we will likely use Tas irrigation, but we do not want to highlight this yet as they are yet to agree to supply us, as we fall outside their normal customer base, in brackets agriculture, and they need legal approval to supply us. This was apparently part of an internal memo that wasn't supposed to be shared with the public. The ABC reached out to Firmus to ask about it and the comment was removed. They were told that it wasn't supposed to be public information. Tasmania Irrigation says they have not been asked about this, which the company confirmed, a spokesperson saying that rainwater harvesting and on-site storage would be the primary water solution to the facility. Also, while we are in Tassie, you got yourselves your inaugural AFL coach this week. Ken Hinkley, who you might remember from such other AFL head coaching positions as the Port Adelaide Football Club, is heading even further south to coach the first season of the Tasmania Devils side when they launch into the competition in 2028. Someone I met very recently told me about this story coming out of Adelaide. I do a session with the students of the radio school that I attended when I was a tiny baby back in Adelaide, and that is where I met T. And she told me about a little father-daughter business in the Adelaide Hills called Walk the Duck. So last week, South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas made an announcement about a new $61.1 million preschool and primary school for the town of Mount Barker. Now, that's about 40 minutes out of Adelaide, and it has been growing like an absolute beast in recent years, so it definitely needs facilities like this school. And you might have also already seen Mount Barker on your telly. It's part of the AFL Gather Round, so the local footy oval there has hosted games. Now, the problem here is that Wok the duck sits on the 5.5 hectare parcel of land that the government wants to build that new school on. So that meant that this very popular Thai restaurant would be subject to a compulsory acquisition. South Australians love their food, and if they find a good one, they will fight for it, which seemingly is what has happened here. The business launched a petition which attracted thousands of signatures. Save Wok the Duck signs started to get shared all over social media. And even the developer of the area, Aston Hills Mount Barker, said there were more suitable sites in the area than the one the SA government chose. Now, on Wednesday, the Premier advised that there had been a development.
What I've done is pause that compulsory acquisition process, and I just want to satisfy myself that the state government is acting prudently by considering every last option where we can before we go ahead with the final decision.
But the SA opposition spokesperson Rick Teague told 9 News Adelaide that he was less than impressed with it.
And then we hear this morning about a pause. Well, again, I say, what the actual duck? What does the pause mean?
The owners have said that they will be meeting with the Premier in the next few days to find out what happens next. New laws passed Parliament this week in the Northern Territory, the NT government claiming they are the most significant overhaul in a generation of its child protection system. These laws came about after the alleged abduction and murder of Kumanjai little baby in Alice Springs. It's called the Every Child Matters Bill, and part of it includes abolishing the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander children placement principle. Now, this is in place to ensure that First Nations children removed from their homes were still kept within their culture. NT Children's Minister Robin Cahill rejected suggestions from critics that the bill would make Indigenous children more likely to be removed from their families.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. There has been zero lowering of the threshold. In actual fact, what it will do is make our department more accountable to the work that they have to do to keep those families connected and together. The introduction of proactive efforts and the emphasis that the CE must make sure that that work is done means there's an accountability at department level that hasn't existed previously.
That's the Minister speaking to the ABC 7:30 report. Now, despite opposition from Indigenous organisations and child welfare experts, the laws passed Parliament this week. National Commissioner for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Children and Young People, Wurundjeri and Noongar Illuwurrung woman, Professor Sue-Ann Hunter, she told NITV, "I think that Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander communities across Australia need to watch this closely because we know when one state starts rolling things back, other states follow." This next story out of Queensland is possibly a case of our collective obsession with true crime becoming problematic. A woman gave evidence at the inquest into the 1989 murder of Toowoomba teen Annette Mason this week, admitting that she'd taken solving this case into her own hands. An inquest into the death of Annette, who was found inside her home, has already been held, but the evidence has not been sufficient enough for a coroner to come to a conclusion on if anyone was likely responsible. A coronial inquiry began in 2018, with hearings held through until 2022 when it was adjourned. It has now resumed with a new witness, whose identity has been suppressed. She's come forward to explain how she spoke to Robert Speedy, who had been questioned by the inquiry previously, who she says told her about another man who used a stool to get into Annette Mason's window the night she was killed. She claims he told her that the man asked if he could get fingerprints off of wood. She says she didn't go to police at this time because she didn't know if officers would believe her. But she then explained years later that she reached out to the man that Mr. Speedy had told her about and that he'd told her that he was at Annette's house the night she died, but he never said he had anything to do with her death. Instead, he named two others and that the person who'd killed her was a police officer, and that's why the evidence was missing. The witness says she did not know Annette and admitted she'd taken an interest in the case after listening to podcasts and reading articles about it after the 2018 inquest was opened. She admitted she'd taken it into her own hands and that she knew it was a big risk, but also she was proud of what she'd done. The two men she named denied they had anything to do with Annette's death. Public hearings are now closed, with the coroner to review it over the next 6 months. Also, while we are in Queensland this week, the Brisbane City Council installed a countdown clock to the 2032 Olympic Games as we marked 6 years to the opening ceremony. The Perth court this week began hearing the case against UK rapper and YouTuber Andrew Felipe Valencia Barrientos, better known as Young Philly. The 30-year-old has been accused of raping and assaulting a 20-year-old fan who went back to his hotel after a gig in Perth in 2024. She claims they initially had consensual sex, but it became violent, describing how he allegedly bit her, slapped her and strangled her. The court was shown photos of the injuries, including bruises on the alleged victim's neck, face and breast. Mr. Barrientos denies the charges and the trial is continuing. In Victoria, the Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion was in Melbourne this week, hearing how Jewish people had been targeted regardless of their views of the Israeli government. Senior Rabbi Alison Konya explained how progressive Jewish groups had also come under fire with abusive phone calls and bomb threats that forced them to conduct lockdown drills. She explained how anti-Semitism had increased almost exponentially since Hamas's attack on Israel in October 2023 and the subsequent Israeli retaliation and genocide. She says she rejects the binary idea that you can only be pro-Israel or pro-Palestinian, saying a two-state solution is the only viable long-term solution, and that there are many Jews and non-Jews who are sympathetic to Palestinians, but that didn't mean they were against Israel's existence. The ACT lost a cabinet minister this week, with Education Minister Yvette Berry resigning. Her then Chief of Staff, Joshua Seremides, and the former head of the ACT Education Directorate, Katie Hare, were found by the Integrity Commission this week to have dishonestly provided a backdoor for the Construction, Forestry and Maritime Employees Union, who you may know better as the CFMEU, to secure a multi-million-dollar contract to renovate Campbell Primary School in Canberra. Ms Berry said while there had been no decision made against her personally, she felt it was the right thing to do to resign from her position. Until this point, she'd been seen as a future leader of the party, having been Deputy Chief Minister since 2016. In New South Wales, and details about the allegations against former Sydney broadcaster Alan Jones were revealed this week. The 85-year-old former radio broadcaster had a non-publication order lifted by the judge as he prepares to stand trial, facing 22 charges of indecent assault and sexual touching involving 6 separate complainants. Mr Jones has pleaded not guilty to all of those charges. The allegations include that Mr Jones kissed and touched one of the complainants in the lift of his apartment after he'd put his hands on his crutch while he was driving. Prosecutors allege he told Mr Jones no several times and had on other occasions told him that he had a throat or mouth illness to avoid a kiss. The other complainants' allegations include similar incidents of inappropriate sexual advances, touching or kissing, sometimes in private and at other times in public at events or in the car. Jones's lawyers attempted to keep the suppression orders in place, arguing that media coverage could influence both complainants and witnesses, but Judge Glenn Walsh dismissed the request as it is a judge-only trial and there was no jury panel to be prejudiced. Well, that is what has been happening around the country this week, folks. And how's this? Just when you thought your week of Solo Bureau was done, it is not. I have a Saturday special coming your way tomorrow because July 25 is World IVF Day, where we celebrate the people, the science, and the process that has changed how we create families. I have a great chat with Dr. Devani Amaratunga, who's a reproductive endocrinologist and the medical director at Life Fertility in Brisbane. She tells us about washing sperm, the big-ass needle they use to suck up eggs, and why she even went into this field of medicine in the first place. It is so good. If you've had IVF, are considering it, are going through it, or just really curious about how it all works, check it out in tomorrow's Saturday special. Then, of course, we're back Monday with the usual Solo Bureau episode. Have a great weekend, team. Thanks again for your hard work in writing reviews, sending story ideas, and just generally being my hype team and sending me so many heartwarming and wonderful messages this week. And in fact, I would like to give a little shout out to Lisa, who sent me a message on LinkedIn this week about how she was made redundant around about the same time that I was. And she says how hearing me talk about it made her feel just like a little bit less awful about the whole thing. I see you, friend. We are not redundant. We were made redundant. Very different. All right. Catch you tomorrow for that Saturday special. Bye. Bye.